Here's a way to make your floral paintings look a lot looser. I have a brush that I use. It's made by the Silver Brush Company, and it's a dagger brush. It's a 1/4 inch dagger, and this little brush is small, but it sure holds a lot of water. And when I start a painting to make it look loose, first I flick some water onto the piece of paper, and I just did that with the dagger brush. But then I moved to a synthetic brush. That's a Princeton Velvet Touch brush, number 10. And I'm going to use that to just quickly draw in the shape of a sunflower. I was noticed that I was making an elliptical shape for the center, and then I just added some yellow color, that's hence a yellow medium. And I'm laying that on with that Princeton brush, and just getting the shape of the flower petals, and working pretty quickly. I usually work quickly when I do loose painting. And I had gotten a little bit of my Quin burnt orange color on the petals, so I added a little bit more. And I'm going to use that color in the center as well. And notice that what I'm doing is that circle that I made for the center I was trying to get rid of that. I don't want a sharp circle right in the middle of my flower, so you can see that I mushed that up a little bit. And now I'm going to go in and add some of that Quin burnt orange color. It's like burnt sienna, and adding it to the center. And again, it's an elliptical shape because the flower is facing to the upper right. It's not facing straight forward. And I will leave some white space in the middle, and I'll work on that later. And now I'm just blending it around a little bit with some water to soften that color, leaving some of the dabbiness look to it, because that's how centers of sunflowers look. Softening some of the edges around that white center in the middle. And notice how I just put some water on my brush, and I'm pulling out some of that Quin burnt orange color onto the petals of the sunflower. And mostly I do that to soften the edge around the center, because I just don't want it to be a hard edge. And at the same time, that helps to define the shapes of the petals a little more. So I go around and add a little bit of that color. And I have another orange color that I use to do that too. I don't recall if I picked up some of that. I have a transparent orange color that's made by Schminke on my palette, and I sometimes use that on the petals as well. There's my silver black velvet dagger brush. It's a small brush. I've tried the 1/2 inch dagger, and that's too big. Well, I'm painting on a smaller piece of paper. If you did a big painting, I guess you would use a bigger brush, but this one holds lots of water, and it's easy for me to manipulate. I can really work this brush around, and you'll see what I mean here. Notice how I don't hold it down at the ferrule. I hold it a little further back on the handle of the brush. And it has a very pointed tip, and I get right up next to the petals with my darker green color. And then as I pull the color out toward the edges of the painting, I lighten it up. I lighten the color. I either use a lighter color or add more water to do that. You want your darkest color to be right up against the edges of the petals that you want to call attention to. And as I get more of that dark color in, you'll see what that does. It makes those petals really stand out. And what I'm using for the green colors is I started out with my light color, which is green gold, and that's a nice yellow-green color that's lighter. And then I found that I can make a nice darker green color with that just by adding some ultramarine blue. And then I added just a tiny bit of the Quin burnt orange to that to darken it further. And so that's what I'm doing here, and you'll see where I apply that dark color closest up to the petals, and then I pull the color out with just plain water or some light color. And also you can see I'm working very fast. And I took to this right away as soon as I started using a dagger brush, but I suggest that if you like this, try it on a practice piece of paper to just get the feel of it and practice making some foliage and leaf shapes, and I think you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. And notice that I can make some random shapes that look like leaves or foliage in the background, but it's not really well defined, which I like. I don't really like leaves, defined leaves in paintings. It just bothers me. I feel like, especially if they're all one color of green, I feel like they take up too much attention, and I want the attention to be on the flower. So I do that same process around the painting, and I try to leave. I don't always do this. I try to leave plenty of white space so that the whole piece of paper isn't covered in green background. But look at, just by manipulating that brush, look at the shapes I get. And as you look at that, you can see some leaves, can't you? Or just some foliage, random foliage that's in the background. And I do this sometimes in layers too. I'll go around and do my first layer, and then once an area dries, I'll go back and add a little more, and you'll see what that does to the painting. It gives it depth. And I'll have to go back and add darker color to some of those areas that are right up by the petals. On the left, you can already see where I applied more of the blue, how your eye goes to that dark color right next to the petal, and that's what you want. You don't want your eye going out of the painting out to the edges. And this is where you just need to practice with this brush. And it can be, I use the silver brush because the bristles are very floppy on it, and it lets me make these random shapes. But there are several companies that make good dagger brushes. I know Princeton makes one, and most of the brush manufacturers make some kind of a dagger brush. And I encourage you to try it. Get one and try it. To me, it makes painting florals so much easier than laboring over making individual leaves, which really isn't fun for me. And you can give your painting a nice loose look with this. The fact that this brush holds so much water, even though it's tiny, the water is what gives your painting a loose look. Whether, if you don't realize that, it's really the water, the addition of water. And using a lot of water gives your painting a loose look. And that's how you do that. And just don't be careful about it. Just get in there and do it. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. And there I'm just kind of showing some twigs. I used some of my Quin burnt orange for that. And that color is quinacridone burnt orange. I call it Quin burnt orange. And again, you could use burnt sienna. They're very similar in color. But I like the vibrancy of the Quin burnt orange. That's why I use it. And look how nice that is already. And I haven't spent very much time at it, probably less than 5 minutes. And it's just a nice, fun little exercise. And now I'm going to go back and add more to it. Now that the painting has dried a little bit, you can't go back into it when it's wet or you'll get blooms, which aren't all bad. But I want to go in and add some darker color into certain spots. And that will call attention to those spots. And just picking up, you can see how randomly I pick up the colors. I don't often mix on my palette. I like to mix on the paper, and I'm just picking up different colors and let them mix as they go on the paper. And that really gives a nice vibrant look to your painting. Now you can see where I'm adding that darker pigment. Look how it calls attention to those petals. And so I add the darker pigment, and then I get water on my brush and then just pull out the color with the wet brush. And I wasn't being that careful when I first painted the sunflower. And when you look at sunflowers, they're not perfect anyway. They're very, the petals are very random shapes going in every direction. So I like doing it this way. I'm not very good when I have to draw a flower first. I guess I have trouble staying in the lines. I am much better off by not drawing it first. And that may come from the fact that I was an oil painter for so many years before I did this. And of course with oil painting you don't draw first, you just get in there and paint. So I had a lot of practice at it. but anybody can do that. It's just a matter of practicing. And it doesn't take much time. You could practice for 5 or 10 minutes every day and get really good at it. And this is a small piece of paper. I think it's 9 by maybe 5 inches, just something I had laying around. But you can take small pieces of paper, 5 by 7 or whatever, and have a pile of them and spend 5 or 10 minutes a day doing this, and you'll be amazed, even after 1 week, how much better your painting gets when you do this. And you'll have so much more confidence in doing it. I'm shaping those petals as I do that. The other thing I want you to notice is I left white space around a lot of the petals. And when you leave white space between the background and the petals, look how bright it makes the petals look. It's like a highlight on them. So think about doing that too. These are just nice little exercises to do. Lots of fun, and you get some really quick results, but you can learn just as much painting on a small piece of paper as you can on a large one. And it's really intimidating to start with a large piece of paper and knowing what can happen, all of the things that can happen. This is far less intimidating to do this, and so much fun. I really like painting small formats. And then once you get good at doing different flowers, then you can put it all together in a larger painting. Now, as I do this, I'm on my second layer, and you can probably see what has happened. I have the foliage that's in the front now, but there's also some background foliage that was there before that I painted in the first layer. And it gives depth to the painting. There I was just using my spritzer bottle, and that bottle is nothing special. I bought it for $1 at Walmart in their little travel section. And those little bottles work great. But anyway, I like to spritz the edges of my paintings sometime to let the water just kind of fade off the page. I don't really want hard edges right toward the edge of my painting. And now I think, I'm still working on the petals. I know I'm going to have to go back and darken up that center as well. Again, just adding darker color. As you want to add darker color, use more pigment and less water. And this brush, since this brush holds a lot of water, keep a paper towel handy to wipe it off when you want to add more pigment so that you don't just keep adding watery pigment. There again, I'm spritzing that. I don't really want those straight lines or hard edges at the bottom. Can you see how now there's a couple of layers of foliage? Gives a little more interest to the painting. There I was picking up my quinacridone burnt orange, and then I have a color on my palette called Cobalt Violet. And no, that's not the right name. I think it's Cobalt Blue Violet. And it's darker than Cobalt Violet. And it's a nice purple color that I added to the Quin Burnt Orange just to get it darker. I just wanted to create a little more depth in that center. So I'm doing it around the edges. Again, trying to create some depth in the center of the flower. And so I didn't take it all over the center, just along the edges, the sides. And then I will also soften that with just water on my brush as well as I get toward the center. I know I covered up some of that white, but I do leave a little bit of the white. I like that as a highlight on the center. I think I bring in some, there's my transparent orange. I added a little bit of transparent orange as well, just because I thought it looked nice. And there I am using some of that Quin Burnt Orange color from the center and pulling it out again, creating the shapes of the petals, indicating the shapes of the petals, I should say. And you don't have to do it on every single one, but it's a nice touch. Just adds a little more interest. So there you have it, a nice little loose painting, easy to do and lots of fun. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.